So I caught an episode of Kultch where Kolby and Kolby Reddish were challenging Jacob Hansen to a debate about the historicity of the Book of Mormon. And I didn't know much about Kolby Reddish, so I was just doing a basic search on YouTube, and I caught this episode and I thought it was really interesting, so I wanted to share that with you.
I started to think about what it might feel like to be the child and to be born into this world that you know nothing about. And these are your loving parents who are telling you what's real and what's not real. And they're like hardcore playing a game with you, and you don't know that this isn't real.
So this is what caught my attention because I don't teach my kids about Santa. When I was growing up, my parents never taught me about Santa, probably because that would have meant that some years Santa wouldn't have shown up. But I didn't grow up learning about Santa. I didn't raise my kids up with Santa. They learned about Santa from the streets. And so I was interested to see how other people handle this whole Santa deal.
And so we decided after a lot of talks that we were going to we told our oldest, or our oldest found out. So he's 11. So he kind of went through the normal. We played along. And then our other one came out when our oldest and us were hiding eggs. So in our family, if you find out, you become a helper. You become an elf, or so you get to play the game with us, because that's how society plays this silly game. And it's actually kind of fun when you're the parent. Right. I think it might maybe more fun to be the parent.
Just to add some branching perspective here, it may also be more stressful as a parent because you definitely want your children to have a great and enjoyable childhood, but sometimes you just can't deliver. Like when your kids see Santa Claus and elves on the shelf dropping off presents for them and your kid has nothing, that's going to make you sad. So just adding some branching perspective here on this particular one. Again, that she has that perspective. It's not her fault that she has that perspective. That's probably how she grew up, and that's probably how she approached Santa Claus. And that might be why she thought differently about how to approach the subject with her kids.
Because you kind of know, you can look up the silliest elf on the shelf ideas. And so it was our youngest who didn't know yet. And so she was 4, and we were trying to decide if she would be old enough to keep the secret for other kids.
And here's another branching perspective. She talks about revealing the secret. And to me, it's really important to understand the difference between what's secret and what's sacred. To me, something that's secret loses its value as soon as it spreads or other people know it. But something that's sacred is something that you want to share with other people. You just hope that they fully appreciate it in the same spirit that you give it to them when you give it to them. And so that's what I think about Santa Claus. When my kids found out who Santa was and how he did it, they asked questions, and I always let them know whenever they were old enough to ask that question, hey, who's Santa, or is Santa real? I always let them know I'm Santa. They interpreted that in different ways as they grew up, but when they finally realized, no, he's been telling the truth the whole time, he is Santa, Santa just doesn't work the way that you think he does, then that's when they understood how important and how sacred Santa was to us. I'll explain more later.
She's in preschool, and this year she's in kindergarten. And so we knew that people are going to bring up Santa all the time. And we had to make sure that she was mature enough to not ruin it in case other kids.
So again, my parents never taught me about Santa. I didn't grow up with Santa, but I did grow up at elementary school in Utah, where a lot of kids talked about what Santa did for them over the Christmas break. And when you find out and you hear that Santa Claus is making it so that they can go to their cabin in the woods and go snowmobiling, or they can go on vacation, a cruise to the Bahamas, go to Disneyland, all that stuff, and you don't even have a car, you start to wonder, like, what is this whole Santa deal? And so I remember I asked my mom, I was like 8, and I asked about, do you think Santa can bring me a Nintendo this year? And she didn't say anything. I don't remember her promising me anything about Santa. My mom could never lie, not even as a joke. And so I don't remember what her response was, but I do remember that before that Christmas, there was this big box that was wrapped underneath my bed, and I started shaking it. And my older brother was there, and he said, hey, don't shake it. And I said, why not? And he was like, oh, it's your Christmas present. It's a bunch of shoes, and you just don't want to mess them up. And so I remember Christmas Day, I was expecting to get shoes from that box. And when I opened that box, it was a Nintendo. But that's when it clicked for me that my brother knew what was in the box. He knew it wasn't shoes. He was just trying to protect the secret of Santa, that it was actually a Nintendo. And I remember being 8 or 9, whatever year it was, and realizing, because I had seen the cost of a Nintendo at the store before, when I realized that probably meant that my mom spent like a day or 2 days' wages, and my own brothers probably went without something so that I could have something for Christmas. That's the last time I asked for something for Christmas, because Christmas was awesome even without Santa.
Not
You
be
know.
a whistleblower. Yeah, 'cause I think that's how a lot of us found
A
out.
bell ringer.
Yeah, the bell ringer. A lot of us, I think, back in the day found out because other kids are like, "Psst, come here."
Yeah.
You know, you go over on the side of the school. I have something to tell you. We're all like, what? Santa's not. You're like, you know, so I think a lot of us found out from siblings or cousins. Yeah.
When they're that little, we'll
Yeah.
just, oh no, like they don't know what they're talking about. Santa
Right.
is, let me prove it by, tricking you with this app or this story or this movie or whatever it is. And the movies are always set up as, if you're kind of starting to not believe, just wait, because, Santa's going to show up at your house and then you'll know for sure.
Yep.
Because you'll see him or get a ride in his sleigh or whatever the movie's going to show. But
And that's why I liked watching this episode, because that's when I realized that there's different ways to react to finding out about Santa. One way is to go around and tell other people the shocking information that you've learned. But another is to react to it the way that I reacted to it, was when you realize that other people are putting in work so that you can have something exciting, then you just become grateful and you realize how important that sacrifice is. And so that's something that I've always tried to share with my kids. Again, I'm not going out of my way to make Elf on the Shelf or tell them about Santa and all the Santa lore. We watch all the Santa movies. I'm not opposed to Santa. But when it comes to that, when they're old enough to start asking and questioning that bit about Santa, I let them know straight out, I'm Santa. And I hope that as they grow up, they start to realize how much work we put in to try to make sure that they had something exciting happen every end of the year, which, of course, we couch in the language of remembering the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And so that's why I thought this episode was interesting. I think all these guys are interesting, and they bring a lot of perspective to what they do and what they share. So I think that's important too.
As a kid, though, it's kind of a rite of passage when you go from the non-believer or
Right,
from
to
the
the
believer to the
helper.
non-believer. Now
Yeah.
you're kind of entering adulthood in a sense that you now are in on the secret, and now it's your responsibility to keep that from the smaller kids.
So like at the Reddish home, at our house, when you find out, you become part of the action. But it's not so much about hiding it or keeping it from the other kids, so much as it is trying to help them understand how important Santa Claus is, to develop gratitude and then just trigger that imbalance in the universe. So because of human reciprocity and a want to do good things for people who do good to you, the thing about giving anonymously is that people don't know who did it for them. Their only response, if they're a grateful person or a person who wants to repay, is to be kind to everyone, just in case that's the person who did the kindness to them. And so that's what we try to focus on, is the anonymous giving is a way to trigger that imbalance in the universe and trigger the best out of human reciprocity so that our kids can go out into the world and try to bless others' lives the way that their lives have been blessed in the least.
So I think it's kind of a rite of passage for children.
it is, and it almost feels really exciting when you do know the secret. The problem is with a 3-year-old. I mean, I think ours was probably, she's a very mature 4-year-old, but it's difficult to know. That's so tricky to know if your kid would be ready or how to talk to them about it.
So there you have it. I think the Reddishes are asking good questions and trying to do the right thing for their kids. And so that's the end of this part of this episode that I wanted to share, is just talking about Santa Claus. Again, the important thing is just being grateful and focusing on the sacrifice of others, and then just doing your best to feel that reciprocity and try to do your best to return that kindness to others. One thing I love about the Book of Mormon is it teaches us that if we focus our gratitude and the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, that's going to power us throughout life so that we can do the most good and return the most kindness to the world. And that's one reason why I love the Book of Mormon, baby. And just for the record, if anybody has a question, I still believe in Santa 100%, probably even more now than I ever did as a kid, because I know that he's legit and he for real works. And so I know presents have showed up at my house mysteriously and unexplained. So if you're out there, if you're my Santa, thank you so much. I'm going to do my best to do what I can to make sure that I turn out to be the person you hope that I can be.